Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Evangelist at ServiceNow, and it is my distinct pleasure to bring you this special episode of Community Live Stream. I'll bring in our guests in just a moment, but first, as always, want to remind you to go over to YouTube. I'm pressing the wrong buttons here this morning, but that's okay. Go over to YouTube, do the share thing, the like thing, subscribe, notifications. You know what to do. You're smart people. You've been around YouTube at least for 6 weeks. So go over, and that would be much appreciated. I'm going to keep the introduction short, letting you know that we also do this on Twitch because I want to make sure that our presenters get the maximum time because we've got a lot of great stuff. Our topic today, I should have mentioned that at the top. This is August 27th, 2020, and our topic today is talking to our ITX Solution Consultants, the top 2 teams. We had a hackathon recently, and these are the top 2 hackathon winner teams, and they're going to show us what they built, how they built it, why they built it, the cool stuff, the lessons learned, the skin knees, letters to grandma, whatever they decided to put in this application. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience that I look forward to sharing that with them because this is kind of that community feel. We're all learning from each other. You know, I learn, you share, we do all kinds of great things, and we all grow together. So very much looking forward to this. If you've got questions that go beyond what's in these presentations today, I strongly invite you to go over to the community.servicenow.com. That's what you see right behind me. Put those questions in. There are hundreds of thousands of people on there that are happy to help you. Looking forward to answering your questions, getting into that discussion, learning from your questions and issues. Put your questions in the right subgroups, the right topics to get the best possible answers. Make sure you search too. Search first before you post something, or people may not be able to find it quite as easily. You want to make sure you're asking the right people for that. So I'm going to skip over the developer community and all that other good stuff about the podcast. You probably saw that on Monday's show. If not, I'll talk to you again about it next Monday. We do this show every Monday and Thursday at 2 p.m. UTC. So whatever time that is for you, in British summertime, that would be 3 p.m., 4 p.m. for CEST. You get the idea. 7:30 p.m. in 7:30 p.m. in India. Figure it out from there. Until you all change your clocks, because I don't, because I just love saying that. Arizona doesn't change their clocks. Let's put the title away and bring up our guests and introducing our 2 teams from our hackathon. I'm going to turn this over to Jerry. Jerry's actually going to do the introductions and get us started, and I'll just act as facilitator with questions. So over to you, Jerry.
All right, thanks, Chuck. Let me share out my screen. I do have a couple slides here to just kind of quickly introduce the teams, but also discuss what we did for the hackathon. So as you know, and a lot of people on this call know, it's been a big year for IntegrationHub, right? With the feature development, spoke development, as well as the need now more than ever for highly effective automation, right? Solutions that are going to solve problems now that we're all working in different modes. So combine that with the fact that, as ServiceNow continues to grow as a company, we needed a way to put IntegrationHub out on the forefront, get people trained up, and get the inspiration for creativity and innovation. So what was born was our hackathon here. 3 main goals in mind. First was to innovate, showcase the great skills that our solution consultants have, collaborate, again, give a team building type of activity, fun competition to get the teams working together, as well as, again, inspire the creativity and get to know our peers across the organization, right? And then lastly is to have fun. I mean, who doesn't love a hackathon, right? So we wanted to, again, have a little fun contest now that we can't get together in person as teams and collaborate and have a little fun. Let's do something remotely, right? So, what was born was the hackathon out of that. Now, all of you who've heard Bill McDermott know he's a really effective communicator, can simplify a message better than anyone. And one of the things that I enjoy when I hear him talk about is behind every great experience is a great workflow. So in my opinion, IntegrationHub is at the heart of that, right? Taking problems that you may have, business issues, or, allowing you to think of an idea and then have the tools and instrumentation actually bring it to life. So that was what we had the teams do. That was the whole point of it. Now, this wasn't your traditional hackathon in which, we we give you one target, everybody gets locked in a room, no one comes out until it's actually done. This is a little bit different in that we put a little bit of enablement around it, but we had them submit ideas that were customer centric as well as add value. And then we had a little bit of a voting panel after everything was submitted and completed to determine what was the most impactful solution, most creative solution, innovative solution, that type of thing. So everything that we did was customer focused with outcomes. But again, inspire creativity, increase skills, showcase the SEs, and collaborate with the peers were all our goals here. So the net of it was that we had 14 teams of 69 people across the world throughout our organization submit ideas. And then they all got together and just produced some amazing stuff. Everywhere from integrating with social feeds, spoke creation for shipping carriers, as well as I think there was facial recognition, document scanning integrations, all kinds of things that we don't currently have in the product that we asked them to create and submit as ideas. So we have the top two teams here. The first place was Social Hub. The second one was Hustle and Flow Designers. And I'm going to give them the opportunity to talk a little bit about their solutions and what they actually did. So I'll turn it over to Joseph first, who's going to review Hustle and Flow Designers.
Thanks so much. And I also want to just thank Jerry and Chuck for giving us this opportunity. We had a lot of fun doing this, and it was a great experience for us as well. So let me just go ahead and walk you through some of the stuff that we covered. So again, we are the Hustle and Flow Designers. Our solution was called Now Logistics. The team, just a quick introduction. We had 5 people on our team: our fearless leader, Tim Ellery, myself, Jimmy Wan, and Michael Hart, and Terry Henderson. So that rounded out our team. We wanted to just spend a minute walking you through not just the product, but the process that we used to get there, because we feel like that was just as important as the end result from our perspective. So when we're looking at what we did and how we did it, so the what was pretty easy. The what is an embedded logistics management system. The idea was to create carrier-specific spokes, so one for FedEx, UPS, DHL, and USPS, that could deliver real-time or near real-time information about shipments directly to platform users. There were 2 use cases that we focused on that we'll dive into in a minute that focused around change management and request management. But again, the idea was to keep it customer-centric and customer-focused. The how we did it was personally, in my opinion, a little more interesting. I'm going to walk you through our process, the process phases we went through. And the important thing from a process phasing perspective was we had a structured methodology that we went through. But one of the important things we want to cover is that anytime you're doing any sort of product like this, development like this, we feel like the branding and the messaging is always key. And it's not a phase in a project. It has to go throughout the entire life cycle. And if we had one recommendation for all the developers out there, it's that, and again, I come from a development background. I remember many times toiling away. And I always say, I thought of myself as the Kevin Costner in the Iowa cornfield thinking, if I build it, they will come. And I got to tell you, that's not the way it works. If you're not thinking about the messaging and the branding, then you can build the Mona Lisa. If you don't know who you're marketing it to, why it's important to them, and how you're going to get that message out to them, you're really spinning your wheels and wasting your time. So that was our big focus on all of this, is how do we relate this to a customer need? How do we message that customer need? How do we make it feel like it's adding real value to users? And I would recommend you guys do that on all your projects. Just to talk a little bit about our process, we went through initial ideation and scoping. That actually probably took one of the longest parts because we needed to figure out what we were going to solve for first. We had a lot of great customer needs submitted by the team from real customer meetings that they had had. In the end, we actually settled on one of the big box retailers' needs around needing to see shipments. But the process that we went through to vet, because we went through several of these ideas before we landed on that one, was how do we make sure that it's going to resonate, not just with this user or this customer, but with everyone. And we did virtual brainstorming sessions where we really dove into, and this is the other thing that we really recommend everybody do, the relentlessly questioning of the value. So in this case, the customer said, well, I'd love to be able to see shipment data inline in ServiceNow. And the question has to be, why? Who cares? Why does that matter? And then they say, well, we don't know when shipments are late. So what? Why is that impacting you? And you just relentlessly question, well, if I knew that, then I'd be able to possibly let people know that key things that they're going to need for specific important high value meetings aren't going to be there, which was one of our use cases. Or that maybe we're going to have to push out a release because we don't have the underlying products that we need to deploy because we're waiting on a switch or something from the manufacturer. So by relentlessly questioning the value, we were able to drive down into the specific use cases that we actually enabled in the solution.
That is so important. I've got a blog from like 2011 on the community that is probably one of the most viewed blog articles out there, just called Ask Why. And if you don't understand what you're implementing, you're not adding value to the process. You have to understand what it's doing, because otherwise you could be duplicating something that's already there. You could be defeating something that's already there. It just, there's so much deeper. Don't just be an automaton of somebody hands you a requirement and you implement it and say, oh, there, it's done, because that's not what your job is as a developer.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, having lived that pain many times, I agree with you wholeheartedly there, Chuck.
Oh, and I had to unwind somebody's previous work in a previous life. You know, I took over a CRM package and it was just so messed up because they never asked why. Yeah. And you know, the team said, well, we just walked up and said, hey, we need a field for this. And then they realized nobody was really overseeing the process, and they had 3 fields that did the same thing, and nobody knew which one to use. And it was like, oh man, what a mess. Yep,
absolutely. I just threw up some of the tools we use. Again, we use Slack a lot. I also like using Poly when you're trying to get, it's a polling solution in Slack that's really nice. So again, some tools that we use. The next phase, after you get an idea, then the work obviously begins. But the work doesn't start in the product. And that's the next thing I want to lay out is we didn't open up the product and start tinkering stuff and throwing stuff together. You got to start with the design. And the design starts with the role-based use case. So we took those high-level use cases that we brainstormed and we really drilled into them. What happens at each phase for each role in this life cycle? And then once you have that, you can map that to your pseudocode diagrams. And please, please, please do pseudocode diagrams. Don't start in product, because in pseudocode diagrams, that's where you're going to figure out all the logical mistakes that you made. Like, oh, shoot, I thought this loop would be here, but it actually got to be before, because otherwise we're not capturing all the information or not flowing correctly. And these pseudocode diagrams are really important in the documentation so that later on when someone like Chuck has to come back and unravel everything that was built before, we understand what the initial intent was. So this is key from a documentation perspective. And then obviously it should always be asking questions, collaborative, never just you in a room doing it on your own, because if you're not mapping back to the value or doing it in the way that the customer expects, then you're not really solving the problem. Once we get done with the actual design, then we can open up the product and actually start the development. We round out our documentation. We started actually building in the components in Flow Designer, build out the functional components, and please comment your code. Use if you don't, you're killing the next guy. It's not fun. So always comment your code.
Next guy, nothing. I can't remember what I did 6 months ago.
I am the next guy sometimes, right? But that's where we obviously get to do the fun stuff of getting in and seeing what the product can really do. Even though this was a hackathon, we felt like it was important to also build out the whole process around test and deploy. We didn't actually build automated test framework test cases, but we do recommend, if this is going to be something going into production, that anything you develop, especially if it's going to create skip records, that you have an ATF test case around it to make sure that when it rolls forward and iterates, you're always managing back to that core requirement, and then document it all. And when you deploy the documentation, everything all with it, so that 2 years from now, when somebody's saying, why is this skip record in my upgrade log, we can map it back to that documentation. And then, as I said, branding is something that happens throughout. When we were going through and developing these spokes, if we hadn't decided on a name, Now Logistics, if we hadn't decided on which spokes and how to brand those, we would have had to go back and do complete rewrites just to add the branding in as in a different layer. But because this was a process throughout, we were able to follow a color palette. We were able to pick appropriate imaging. And those, I love Coolio. It's an online color palette generator, which is a great tool because I'm terrible with aesthetics. But you can go on and like pick a few logos or whatever, and they'll generate a color palette for you. All of this stuff just makes your product more professional. And that's really the key, is that if you brand it well and do a good job establishing a brand in the solution that you're creating, even if it's just a spoke, people are going to trust it more because it looks like it's professionally put together, not something somebody slapped together really, really quickly. So that was important, is make sure you take the time to add the adequate branding to make it look like it's a professional product, not just something you did in your garage in 2 minutes. So the product, let's go ahead and jump over real quick. I want to show you what we did. So at its core, we added essentially the ability to track shipments and relate those to orders. We added within the product itself a table as well as a workspace experience where the workspace manager could come on, look at dashboards related to how many shipments they have in flight and deliveries, and then view the shipment status and filter and manage these shipments. But they were all driven by the actual flows. So if we go into the actual Flow Designer, you can see that the flows are actually, there's two of them. And I probably should have preloaded these because it takes a second to launch them. But you can see that in the flows themselves, essentially it's a lookup that happens every hour. We felt like 1 hour was frequently enough in this case to get current status. Obviously you could change that if you needed it more frequently or less frequently. But what we do is we scan the shipping records label or table and go out and look up all the shippings that have not yet been delivered and get the status from each of the different carrier spokes. Here again, adding these carrier spokes with their own branding conveys that sense of it being a complete solution. Once it's actually created, we then go and update the actual shipment record, and then all sorts of logic is performed. In our case, the use cases were, again, a change manager is waiting on a shipment and has to delay a release package or release package as a result of a switch not being present. So we update the change order and notify them. And the requester of a specific item from the service catalog isn't going to get it in time. They need to be notified. So all of that is handled in the subtask or the subflow of the getting the shipment record. One of the nice things too is that we built out the idea for the future design. So with the action, we didn't just have the action, for instance, for the get shipment status that we had. We built out stubs for future development, things like validating address or creating labels or calculating costs. Those are things that aren't built into this version of it, but certainly could be added to add value in the future. That's our solution. Again, from a functionality perspective, it's fairly straightforward, but we felt like it added a lot of value because we contextualized it around those user needs.
So go through the process flow in the product of what a day in the life might look like for some of these personas.
Sure, absolutely.
We got a couple minutes.
Yeah, the use case that we went through for the requester was a requester is on the actual catalog. They order a webcam because we're all Zooming these days.
Yep.
And they needed to have the webcam for an investor relations meeting. And the shipment was delayed. And the use case was that in the current product, there's no status about what's going on with the shipment. All they see is the status of the order, which is the order is currently not meeting its SLA, but they don't know why, they don't know when to expect it. And they don't know whether or not they should be panicking. Should I be running out to a retailer and buying my own webcam? What's the story? And so the use case is this update status for shipment record was able to notify them that the shipment was in fact delayed, but that it will be there later on that day before the actual meeting occurs. They're not then required to panic and go out and make some other business decision. So by giving them that insight, they understand that they're going to have what they need by the time they need it, or that they wouldn't, and that they're going to need to go out and buy the webcam. The other use case that we walked through in the video that we produced was, again, a change manager waiting on a release. And had started reorganizing priorities and resources in preparation for this release when they find out that their switch that they're waiting on is delayed in customs. And so when that actual trigger occurred, the change order was updated and the change manager was notified such that they could say, all right, rather than continuing to pull all these resources and putting other projects in jeopardy, I can now reschedule this release to a date past the time when we expect the switch to arrive, thereby getting other work done and not wasting the cycles spinning up for this release that isn't going to happen.
Nice. So you've really put more of in terms of the catalog example in the first one, you've put a bigger picture of the supply chain management around it to improve that experience. I mean, the catalog is nice and everything, you know when it's on order and whatnot, but you've almost given it more of that Amazon experience that I just got this week. It said, hey, one of your products is delayed. It'll be there Thursday instead of Tuesday. Sorry, would you like to change your order? You can take action on it. But now we've got that kind of experience in the platform. Wonderful.
Yeah, that's precisely what we were going for. We wanted an Amazon style experience so that the users wouldn't have to go out to extra swivel. First of all, they wouldn't have to swivel chair because a lot of times the users who are making those requests, they don't have the ability, they don't have the tracking numbers, they don't have any of that information.
Right.
We don't necessarily want to expose that to them, but giving them the information allows them to make business decisions that drive better value.
And they're getting that via Slack message, email, you said a couple others?
Well, so in the change manager case, we actually updated the change order and sent them a notification, which would go via their predefined notification methodology. And the same with the request user, we were updating the request object and notifying them if they're set up to receive mobile-based notifications or emails, whatever notification method they have set up.
So what were some of the more challenging bits that you encountered on this?
So, and I'll let the team jump in too here if they want, but I think from my perspective, the hardest part was putting a box around what's really going to add value. Because once you start to try and open up that world, like one of the things we talked about was, well, some of the carriers allow you to put in an account or an address and get all of the shipments you're expecting back. But as we're thinking about that, well, does that really add value? Because if I know a shipment's coming, but I don't know what it is or why someone wanted it or relate it to the demand, then I'm not adding business value. So that's one of those areas of, again, if you don't think through the design of what it is you're trying to achieve, you could have easily gone down that rat hole and started developing all this great stuff that created all this data that nobody's ever going to use. So that for us, I think was one of the challenges, was just trying to understand how do we target this so that we're adding real value to customers today.
Well, and although a hackathon is a competitive thing where you've got a finite set of time, that's a very close analogy to what developers have in the real world. You have a finite set of time. You've got 2 weeks to do this, or you've got 40 hours to do this, or you've got, whatever it is, you've got to go build it. So you better know the scope of what you're building, so you're working on the right things that add value at the right time. So that's a same thought process you went through for this internal competition is what every developer should be going through. If they're, as long as they're involved in the design phase, that's right, a different story. So hopefully somebody should be. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why that presentation on the process, 2/3 of the time easily should be on the thinking through the ideation and then the design. If you're diving straight into development, you're wasting time because you're developing stuff that's probably not going to be needed or used ever.
I like a story that David Liu shared with me about Fred Luddy. This is going to the way, way early days of ServiceNow. Fred often said, I want to give you an assignment. It's due in a week. You're going to think about it for 6 days and implement it in 1. That's like, wow. Okay, that's probably not quite my ratio, but I get the idea.
But if you spend 6 days thinking about something, you're going to be a lot more effective when you actually start the work. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
And that's the goal. Yeah. All right.
Anybody from the team want to jump in? Comments, thoughts, lessons learned?
Hey, Chuck, it's Jimmy. So I just add and reemphasize what Joseph said, right? We did spend a lot of time doing the thought process behind what we were going to build and why we were going to build it. One thing I was going to just kind of toss in there with the design, right? We spent a lot of time kind of talking about through the design, but there are also places where we consciously talked about decisions that we made that, in the design where it's like, it's a hackathon. We don't have to build this to production level, right? So we can take certain shortcuts in certain areas. But in the process of doing that, we did talk about like what we would do if it was production. Like, one of the goals that we had at the beginning of the hackathon was this is also educational. So let's kind of teach each other maybe some of the things that we might do if we were coding for production. So just a small example of that is the return values from the various actions. The various carriers all return different things for the same state, right? So something that's on time might not say on time from one carrier to the next. So in the course of the actions, building the actions, we just kind of shortcutted it and put that logic in the actions itself, kind of normalized it. So the actions all return the same thing just to make it easier. But we talked about if we were to take this to a professional, like production level thing, we probably would have some kind of a lookup that said, this is the value coming back from a particular provider. This is the value and this is the normalized value, right? So you could look it up and just kind of abstract it so that the carrier action itself would be, clean and pure and returning basically what the APIs from the providers gave, and let the consumer actually do with what they want. But we just kind of shortcutted it there just to save some time, right? So those are the kinds of things that in the process we did, just differentiating between what professional level, production level development might be versus what we did in Hackathon.
Yeah, there's MVP, and then there's the ultimate vision of what you see as the clean, full end product. Oh yeah, we've all got those.
Yeah, since we're talking to developer audience, I figured we might just kind of differentiate that a little bit too, because we are talking about hackathons.
Hackathons are not finished products. They're good enough to show what you need to show, right? I saw some workspace, I saw some Flow, I saw some IntegrationHub. What other parts of the platform were involved in this application?
So we we added a table space around it. We added some business rules for logic for when statuses were updated to handle some of the notification stuff. Obviously, we were using the notification engine on the back end. We were using SLAs and timers logically, although we didn't actually have to code all of that. Some of it was just in the design phase. Mm-hmm. But we talked about how we could trigger secondary lookups when SLAs were close or stuff like that. So, I mean, we used pretty much every conceivable part of the product. We wanted to be, especially like, we didn't have to do the workspace view, but we thought, a logistics manager is reasonably a role of somebody who's going to be able to see that dashboard and know where are all my shipments, rather than just the end user consumer view. We wanted to create that role who could go into that one source too. So we tried to think about it more holistically.
Yeah, and underpinning all that, it's a scoped app. So we did build a scoped app for logistics around that, along with all the various spokes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Hustle and Flow Designer. I'm looking at the clock, and we should probably turn it over to Social Hub. Who will be speaking for your team?
Me, it's Fabio Lemmy. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to share briefly my screen. My name is Fabio, and I'm here today with William and Max, and we're going to show you, talk to you about our project for this 2020 IntegrationHub Hackathon. So when we decided our project, so we took into consideration three main aspects. We wanted to build something 90%, 100% from IntegrationHub. So we want to use IntegrationHub, but we don't want to add any code, anything. So just IntegrationHub, just to show how easy it is building application, building integrations with IntegrationHub. The second aspect, it would be, of course, finding something, having an idea that would be innovative. So thinking about the future, but also thinking about today. So how people is communicating today, how people are used to what are the better, the best solution they choose to communicate between each other. And then the third thing was to build something that would be valuable for the customers, so something that can bring some benefits. So thanks to William idea, what we decided to do was to put in the basis for a solution to improve customer service. So the idea is to make customer service much more productive, proactive, and improving general customer satisfaction. So this is mainly about connecting people, exploiting modern channels, modern communication channels, get people's sentiment also in order to get closer to final customers. And that's basically what we did. So I leave now William and Max to explain details of what we did.
Thank you, Fabio, and thank you, Chuck, for having us in your web show. So I'm going through quickly on this slide, and then we will switch on the instance. So mainly the basic idea is to collect information from social networks and bring this information inside ServiceNow. And when I see information, I refer mainly to posts. A post is I can imagine you are familiar with social networks. So if you use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something like that, a post is a message, a text, a picture that a person can publish on the network, on the social network. The point is that usually people use social network also to share their ideas, their feeling, the sentiment they have with a product or with a service. So probably if you are a company, you want to know how people, what is the sentiment of people that are using your products and your services. And if you go on the web, on social network, probably you can get some information about your brand, about your products, about your services, just looking at public posts. So we selected one social network just for the sake of the hackathon, but basically you can extend this implementation to other social networks. So as you can see, the icon in the middle of the slide is the icon of Twitter. Is a social network very used in the, let me say, in the Western world. And so we went through three main steps. The first one was to build the data structure to collect information, to collect posts, to collect reposts, to collect author information, to collect like information like number of retweets, number of followers, and so on. And then we, the biggest part was to integrate with the Twitter. So build all the spokes, all the actions, all the flows we need to talk with Twitter and to collect information. And the third step was to integrate with the Google Sentiment Analyzer. That is a very simple API that you can invoke, and you push a piece of text to this API, and Google will answer you with a numeric score that goes from -1 to 1, where -1 is a bad sentiment, 1 is a positive, a good sentiment, and 0 is neutral. I will switch to the instance. Max, can you share your screen, please?
Sure. Let me share the screen.
Okay, so let's start from the final result. Okay, so this, can you close the menu on the left, Max, please?
No, good demos good demos always start with a colorful dashboard, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And so in this dashboard, you can see the big number on the left is the number of posts we collected till today on this instance. So as you can see, it's a big number. And how we collect them, we have a configuration table where you can set up the hashtags or the account on the social you want to search for. So you can invoke Twitter APIs and ask to Twitter APIs, give me all the posts that contains this specific hashtags or this specific keyword or this specific account. And with Flow Designer, you can configure it to do it periodically, like every hour, every 15 minutes, as you want. And the first thing is to collect the data. Once the data are in ServiceNow, you can build all the things you want to build on it. So we integrate the platform also with Google Sentiment Analyzer. As you can see at the bottom, there is a yellow and green line over the chart, and the bar, the blue bars. Okay, the blue bars is an average sentiment score calculated by Google Analyzer. So basically, how it works: we configure some keywords we want to collect from Twitter, like hashtag ServiceNow, @BickleMcDermott, or whatever you want, hashtag Ferrari, or the brands you want to monitor, or the account you want to monitor. And we collect tweets every some hour, some time, bring this data into ServiceNow, and for every single post, we invoke the Google API to get the sentiment score. So Google can see, no matter the language, so we collect tweets from every language. And as you can see on the chart, on the pie chart on the right, so as you can see, there are many languages. No matter the language, Google can say if the text, if the post is a good post, it's a bad post, or is if it's neutral. And try to imagine this. Maybe you are launching a new product or a new service on the market, and you want to see how customers react to this new product or new service. So when you launch this new product, you can start to monitor Twitter, and every time a person put a post on Twitter with an hashtag related to your product or with some specific keyword related to your products or services, you can see the sentiment, if people are happy, if people are not happy. And this is just an example. Imagine if you want to monitor a competitor, for example, how people are talking about your competitor. And you can also start and taking action. But let's go through a little bit of these numbers and charts just to show you what we did. So number of posts, top left. Number of reposts. So in Twitter, there is this concept that you can retweet. And so take a post of another person and republish. So we can count also how many times a post has been retweeted. The sentiment score, and we can obviously calculate an average, as you can see, top in the middle. And with the performance analytics, we can say, okay, the sentiment is going up or the sentiment is going down. So based on this, you can analyze the quality of the sentiment. Then we have a post by source. So what kind of technology customers are using to tweet about your product and services. And maybe this is not so important, but think about it. If you're launching a new application on the market, and see the people that are talking about your brand are using more Android than iPhone, probably is important before to decide what kind of application deliver on the market. And then we have some information about the language, as I said before. On the second tab of this dashboard, we have the word cloud. We are just leveraging on standard reports and performance analytics stuff. As you can see, these are some keywords used in posts collected by Twitter. And you can easily understand what kind of information we are collecting, like information about Apple, Microsoft, Ferrari, ServiceNow, COVID-19, Tesla, and so on. So this is a good way to monitor what kind of words people are using when they are talking about you. And then we have clustering. This is another idea. So the basic concept is, the point is, once you have the data inside ServiceNow, you can treat them using all the tools you have in the platform. So you can use performance analytics to analyze them. You can use clustering and predictive intelligence to see if there are some cluster topics related to the post. So no matter what is the scope, the final scope of the thing you want to implement, but once you have the data in ServiceNow, you can do a lot of things. And let me show you also, Max, switch to the to some table. Yeah, let's show something about the data structure, because these are very important. Obviously, this is the first thing you have to do. You have to prepare tables, fields, and this is the configuration table. So every row in this table is the configuration of the thing you want to collect. So we want to collect from Twitter. As you can see, Twitter is a drop-down list. So actually, Twitter is the only, the unique social network we integrated during the hackathon. But basically, the idea can be extended to other social networks. So we want to collect from Twitter all the tweets related to the keywords at ServiceNow. The configuration is active. And if you want, you can also create interaction. So the flag create interaction is used to create an interaction. So, I mean, when I say interaction, I mean the interaction record in the interaction table. And so you can start also to have a talk with the customer that posts this tweet on Twitter. So, but we will see this later. And as you can see at the bottom in the related list, we have all the executions. So this is a kind of log of all the time the Flow Designer collected tweets from related to this configuration. And in the post table, the post related list, we have all the tweets collected from Twitter related to the specific configuration. Max, just open one of them. This is the post table. As you can see, a lot of information. Obviously, these are provided by Twitter. So why we choose Twitter? Because if you go on developer.twitter.com, you can have a free account. You can collect data about public tweets without pay nothing. It's free. You can play with the APIs. You have some limitation, but it's fine for the sake of an hackathon. So that's it. So all the information you see here, all the feeds are feeds collected from Twitter, and I can say that they can be generically intended to be used by every social network, because every social network has like the concept of the content of a post, the source, the author, the language, the URL that brings you to the social network post, the hashtag used, and where possible, we structured the data in different tables, as you can see from the reference fields we have here, like the author, for example. So about the author, we collect everything. So the social bio, the number of followers, the picture. These can be useful if we see a customer that is not happy. So Google can say that the sentiment score of a tweet is very low, so it's bad. And we can see that this tweet has been posted by an influencer, maybe with a lot of followers. So we can take action. Maybe we can get in contact with this person and try to be proactive. So the idea is to collect information also about the author. So post, configuration, author, what I'm missing
executions.
Here. Yeah, executions is the, let me say, the log of every single execution. Why this is useful? Because it takes some time to collect tweets. So we can see if there are jobs running and how long it takes to collect some jobs, if we have some error and so on. And then also we have an hashtags table where we collect the most used hashtag. You know, the hashtag is very common in social networks. It's just the hashtag sign followed by a word. And the idea is that sometimes you want to know what are the words related to your brand. So when people talk about you, what are the most near hashtags they use? And this can be used to see. So the point is, using social app, you can see how people are talking about your products, your services, how people are talking about your competitor. Okay, so you can react based on this. And using the concept of the interaction, you can also react proactively to customers on social networks. So if I'm going to tweet something bad about, I don't know, a company because I'm not excited about their products, I just bought a new phone and the phone is slow, I don't like it, and I don't know, whatever you want. Probably one of the first things I'm going to do is to share on social networks how sad I am with the product. So if the company can intercept this bad sentiment, can get in contact with me soon and proactively give me a customer service that is different from other companies. So I'm not getting in contact with the company through traditional channels, let me say, phone, emails, even web portal. I don't want to register a new account on every single company just to get assistance. I want just to use my favorite channel, maybe Twitter, maybe Instagram, maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, and get in contact with the company. This is something that is already, let me say, it's not something new. If you go on Twitter, a lot of companies give assistance on Twitter, right. Telco company, insurance company, banks. It's just another channel. and for sure there are on the market products like social apps. I mean, if you go in marketing departments, probably they already have tool like this. Now this is on ServiceNow, and this is the real differentiator, because you can mix data from social network with data from customer services. That's the very good thing. So interaction, what does it mean? This is a post collected from Twitter. This is just a test we did with a fake account that at social, and there is a long number. It's just an account we created just for the hackathon. And as you can see, for this specific post, we created an interaction. So this has been created automatically because the configuration related to this post has the flag create interaction set to true. So if you open interaction, Max, please. So the idea is that we can bring the conversation inside into ServiceNow, into an interaction. And so for the end user, for the customer, they are having the interaction on Twitter. So they are just tweeting with us. And behind ServiceNow, we are not using Twitter. We just adding comments and, or in this case, work notes to the interaction. So every time you post a work notes here, a reply to the original tweet is made on ServiceNow, on Twitter, sorry. I don't want to take more time. Max, do you want to show what we did on Flow Designer and IntegrationHub? That's probably most interesting.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, but based on this configuration, what we have here in the interaction is also a reference to a post that is telling us which is the source that has generated this kind of interaction. And from here, you can also navigate through the references to get the sentiment score for that post, or to the author, or directly to all the information that are coming from the social network that we are using. As William has said, when an operator, an agent, is replying to this interaction, there is a flow that automatically posts this comment as a reply to the original post that it is in Twitter.
I like that because you don't lose the thread. You've got everything captured in ServiceNow, as well as the end user really doesn't recognize that. They just go, "Oh, I got a reply from, Ferrari," or whatever it happens to be. But you've got that whole transcript, not just from Twitter, but from the other social networks, and you can aggregate that.
Exactly.
This is very powerful stuff.
Exactly, and the other point is that when you have let me call it a root social ID, so a root post that is creating an interaction, then related to this post, you have all the other posts that are coming from that post. So also the reply that has been entered as a comment in the interaction is tracked in the system as another post that is also coming from the get tweets that we are doing for retrieving the information, so for retrieving the tweets.
You've even got a source field to tell where that message came from. That's amazing. I like that.
Exactly. And to do that, we used, as said, the Flow Designer. We have some main flows, like the get tweets. The get tweets is triggered every 1 hour or whatever it's your best interval to set up. And what it does is to go through all the configurations that are active in the system and try to get all the tweets related to them using the keywords as a filter in the search to call the API from Google. From Twitter. And this is the specific action that we implemented to do this kind of integration. And what we did is because this API is using an old version of the authentication, we did a sort of custom call to have the first action, the first script that is retrieving a token from the token API to then be able to retrieve all the information about the tweets. So this is something that was done, let me say, custom. And then we have the logic to store the tweets in the tables that we have created in our custom application. The second step is that once you have all your tweets in the platform, you can start to build all the logics that you want to implement. So in our case, what we did is to create another flow, which is called get sentiment. This get sentiment is triggered when the post is created or updated. And also we had added some conditions to understand if we have the information about the content or if it is empty, and if we have the information about the language. And then we can call another action that we implemented, which is called Google Sentiment Analyzer. This one is not something new that we did from scratch, but we are using an API that is already in ServiceNow in the platform if you activate the plugin. So it's a feature that is already in use in the platform to analyze the surveys, for example, for the customer satisfaction, the CSM. So we utilize the same script include to adopt it for our use case. And the next thing that we did is another flow called create interaction. So when we have a post that is created and the configuration as the flag that we were talking about called create interaction is set to true, what we do is to check if there is already an interaction related to this specific post. And if not, we are going to create a new record in the interaction. And we are relating this interaction to the Twitter that is triggering this interaction. And once the interaction is created, the last one, it's the interaction commented. So when the interaction is updated and the work notes are changing, and the type is Twitter, obviously, because now we are just integrating with Twitter, we call another action, which is called reply to tweet, that now is using what, again, is already in the platform. So we have a Twitter plugin that can be activated to create the integration with Twitter to post a message. To post a message, we need to define the credentials, so the Twitter credentials. This is what we have used. So we have an access token, a token secret, a consumer key, and a consumer secret. And with this record, with the for Twitter credentials, we are able to generate an authorization header, and then we can call the API to post the Twitter using the body, the text message that the agent has inserted as a comment in the interaction. Then we have developed also some other flows just to try to understand what can be added in the future. And there is one flow related to the population of latitude and longitude. If we would like to relate to a post or to an author a specific geolocation, if we would want to understand where these tweets are coming from. We have another flow here, which is called get similar post, because we should be able also to understand if some tweets are related together. So if they are talking about the same things. So as William said, in ServiceNow, we can also use the clustering and the similarity framework to try to create some aggregations for better analyze all these kind of contents. And the last one is the get profile picture, which is what we are using when creating an author to get to download the picture, the public picture of the author. And that's it.
So what was the inspiration for this idea? Did it come from a customer? Did you see it as somebody mentioned it? Where did the idea come from?
To be honest, actually, it was in my mind. Just went out during a brainstorming with the team. I don't know why is in my mind. Probably because I'm a social network heavy user in my personal life, and it's something that is missing in the platform. And sometimes I used to interact with companies through the social network. So I prefer to use social network channels to interact with the companies I want assistance from. So probably that's something in my mind. And it's, if you think about it, it's something that is missing in CSM, and it's not a big deal, but it can make it can make the difference sometimes.
Yeah, I like the way that you hooked it into CSM. That's a perfectly logical way. I don't know who's sharing at the moment, but we might want to stop and go back to talking faces. There we go. The what was the most fun part that you built out in this app? Anybody can answer that one.
The fun part for me, the content of the posts you can collect from Twitter sometimes are very funny. So because you can understand how information, because they are public information. We are just collecting public posts, so they are not private thing. And the funny thing is to see how people are talking about some specific companies and to see the sentiment of this on some specific brand. So for example, some iconic brand like Apple, Tesla, Ferrari, the sentiment is always good. ServiceNow is neutral good, let me say. And sometimes we have, I don't want to say the name, but let me say traditional companies. And you can see that people are very sometimes angry with them, so probably they should consider to use social app to fix this situation, because the brand reputation is very important to me. So that the funny part is see the content of the post. That was funny.
Do you think we could, or maybe we should, connect this up to the presidential election to try and predict who's going to be the next U.S. president? I'm sorry.
We can do it. We can do it.
That's a side project that you may want to do off to the side, but I'm not going to endorse it. But it'd be interesting to see how the sentiments today relate to the outcome.
Let's add a configuration record and see what happens in the next days. Let's see.
Socialize that internally at ServiceNow only. Today's poll results. All right, I had to go there. Well, we are just about out of time. Thank you to both of the winning teams, Social Hub and Hustle and Flow Designer. I love the names, by the way. That's awesome. You guys did a great presentation. Wonderful work. How long was the hackathon? Just curious how many hours it took to put this all together.
Those are two separate questions, because I think the whole hackathon was 4 weeks, but remember this was on top of our day jobs, so
okay.
hours put together was a little bit less than we would have liked in our case, and I'm sure in the other team's case as well. Doing the best we can with nights and weekends and such.
Very nice, and time zones and whatever else was in there. Excellent work. Well, thank you once again, everybody. I am going to give our salutatory sign off for this. So, get the right background on there. There we go. Don't want to show everybody my notes of what I was doing. Thank you for joining us on YouTube and Twitch and watching this on the community. I appreciate everybody joining today. Hope you can join me for the next episode on Monday, the 31st. Yes, where we'll be talking about script actions, going into actions that are triggered by events and what you can do with them. This was another one that I've been using for years, but when you got to go teach somebody about it, you always learn something new. So I hope you can join me for that one. And until then, take care, be safe, learn something, share something, and I look forward to seeing you on the next community live stream. Thanks, everybody, and bye.